werewolves and a small western town? Who doesn't like this idea? In Overcast, Walden and the Werewolf, you are thrown into this Wild West horror adventure as Walden, the tormented hunter who had a near-death experience and hasn't left his house since. That is, of course, until the story occurs. Walden leaves his house only to find the town has been completely destroyed and the people murdered. Who did this? And why does Walden keep seeing a ghostly sign of a giant wolf? All of these things you must solve to unravel the secret of the werewolf. With your trusty lantern and rifle in hand, with only a virtual map to display your location, you must find your way through the land, discovering the secret along the way. While animation quality itself could use some improvement, this is to the developer's advantage. With the use of filters and lens effects, the mood and the game as a whole benefits from this stylistic method of animation. With grainy and warped images flickering across your screen, you are immersed into the dark journey Walden is undertaking, as well as enhancing the horror of the game itself. The sounds of Overcast, whether it be the sounds of the werewolf chasing you, and hearing its massive pounding footsteps growing closer to you, or the in-depth music and soundtrack that goes with the game itself, you find yourself completely forgetting the sounds are fabricated or separate from the gameplay itself. The music that is through the game itself is well written and is also a standalone soundtrack you can purchase. This gives the game a full and unique feel, making your Wild West and nightmarish stories seem completely believable. The jump scares are very apparent on the onset of the story, though taper off as the game continues, eventually turning into an action-adventure by its conclusion. Having bodies and frightening images thrown into the screen while wandering through the fields around your town is scary, but when you find yourself in the dungeon further down the way, the scares themselves are fewer and more spaced. I mean, if you find yourself in an old, spider-infested dungeon called Pain, it would be much scarier than the open fields by a town you live in. Since the game itself takes on the style of gameplay as a first-person shooter, it is also worthy of note that it takes the basic style and viewpoint, but changes it to make Overcast have its own unique take on first persons. The reload time is completely unrealistic, taking a very methodical and deliberate act to reload your bolt-action rifle. This is, again, completely intentional to add to the horror and the helplessness of your situation. There is also no run feature built into the game, so when something is chasing you, you know it. The story itself is broken into chapters, and this is to your advantage since there are no save points, requiring a full chapter restart if you die along the way. The story itself is told through text cutscenes and panning animatics, giving the player a chance to take a breath or shudder as the story is being told. And while this concept is enjoyable, the story itself could also use with some dialogue and plot development. But even with the areas needing work, the game itself delivers a fun and frightening experience. Simply a great game to play on a late night, delivering an 8 out of 10.